It started with a scream. Not the panicked kind, just the short, startled cry of a kid who'd fallen off a swing. My daughter Emma brushed sand off her knees, ready to try again. The morning sun hit the metal chains, and the air smelled faintly of mulch and sunscreen. That's when the shadow fell over us. Clipboard, sunglasses, tight smile. Carol, the HOA president. She always had that tone, the one people reserve for warning labels. "Mr. Hart," she said, "your children can't use this playground." I squinted up at her. "Come again?" "It's for residents in good standing. Your yard's in violation. Until the fines are cleared, the playground is off limits." I stared at her. My mortgage had been paid off for 6 years. My dues were current. My violation was a half-inch discrepancy on the height of my mailbox post. An old feud I'd let simmer quietly because, well, I had bigger things to deal with. I stood, calm. "You're saying you're banning my kids from playing?" She glanced toward the swings, where Emma and her little brother Luke waited silently. "HOA policy, page 12, section 4. Her voice was clipped, but her eyes were smug. She wasn't enforcing a rule. She was flexing authority. "Page 12, I repeated, pulling out my phone. I already had the HOA bylaws saved as PDFs. "That's the landscaping section, Carol, not playground access." Her jaw twitched. "Well, we'll be revising that at next month's meeting. And until then, you'll comply." She turned and walked off, heels crunching gravel, clipboard tucked like a weapon. Emma whispered, "Dad, are we in trouble?" "No, sweetheart," I said, scanning the bright blue sky. "They are."
That night I pulled up the HOA documents again. Every bylaw, every amendment, every board vote. Years of paperwork, and not a single line granting the HOA authority over public access areas. The playground wasn't private. It was built on an easement dedicated to the county. The funny part? I'd helped design that easement 5 years earlier, for my day job. See, Carol didn't know I wasn't just a quiet homeowner with a federal badge in a drawer. I was an investigations officer with the Federal Property Commission, the agency that enforces land use compliance for federally aided housing projects. And our subdivision? It had received a tidy little federal grant for that very playground. The next morning, I went for a walk. Ball cap, coffee in hand, casual. I stopped by the playground fence. A new sign had been zip-tied to it overnight. HOA access only, violators subject to fines. Bold, red letters, official-looking font. I smiled. It was going to be a long week for the HOA. By Tuesday, the harassment began. A violation notice on my doorstep. Unauthorized landscaping materials. Translation, my kid's sandbox. Then a fine, $150 for non-compliant recreational equipment. Translation, their plastic slide. Then the email. Your conduct at the playground was observed by HOA security. Further incidents may result in suspension of community privileges. I didn't even know we had HOA security. Still calm, always calm. I documented everything. Screenshots, photos, dates, times. By Wednesday, I'd installed a pair of discrete cameras, one on my mailbox post, ironically, and one pointed at the playground entrance. I also dropped a pair of air tags inside my kids' scooters, just in case those security patrols got curious. Thursday morning, I found a golf cart parked across from my driveway. 2 men in polos sat inside, pretending to check their phones. One of them had a clipboard. I walked over, phone recording in my pocket. "Morning, gentlemen," I said. "Need directions, or are you patrolling federal property again?" The taller one blinked. "Federal?" "Yep. That playground's on an FHCP-funded easement. You're trespassing if you're enforcing HOA rules here." They exchanged looks. I smiled. You might want to check your jurisdiction before you write another fake citation. That afternoon,
The golf cart disappeared. But Carol wasn't done. At 6:03 p.m., I got a formal warning email for creating a hostile environment. The complaint attached a grainy photo, me standing by the golf cart, mid-sentence. Nice try. The timestamp on the photo didn't match my camera feed, which meant someone had altered it. By Friday, my living room had turned into an evidence wall. Maps, bylaws, correspondence, timestamps, and 3 USB drives of footage. My wife thought I'd lost it. "Ryan," she said, "can't we just move?" "Not yet," I said, pinning the latest printout to the board. "They're about to hang themselves with their own paperwork." Saturday morning came quiet and bright. The kids wanted to go back to the playground. I said yes. We walked over together. The sign was gone. The gate was locked with a cheap padlock. Carol stood nearby, talking to another parent. When she saw us, she smiled, that same tight, self-satisfied smile. "You again," she said. "Didn't you get the message?" I stepped closer. "Actually, I sent one." She frowned. "Certified letter," I continued, "to your management company and the county compliance office. Includes copies of your unauthorized signage, your fake security patrol logs, and your board's use of HOA funds for non-permitted enforcement." Her face paled. "And since the playground was built with federal assistance," I added quietly, "your little ban might qualify as misuse of grant property." "You're bluffing," she whispered. I smiled. "You'll find out Monday. County inspectors coming by." The silence that followed was heavy. Even the kids stopped swinging. Carol turned on her heel and left. That night, I opened my laptop and began labeling files. Playground access violation, tampered photo evidence, harassment incidents. It wasn't anger driving me now. It was precision. A simple rule of enforcement. Never act on emotion. Act on proof. By the time I was done, every digital trail led back to Carol and her board. Every unauthorized expenditure, every fraudulent email, every abuse of authority. They thought they were keeping kids off swings. They were really hanging themselves with their own signatures. Next step, bring in allies. Not the kind you call from the neighborhood, the kind you call from Washington. Monday arrived like clockwork. Clear sky, faint breeze, birds chirping in total ignorance of bureaucracy. At 9:15 a.m., a white county pickup rolled into the neighborhood. The side door read, Community Compliance Infrastructure Division. The inspector, a wiry man named Ortiz, stepped out with a clipboard and a county seal badge clipped to his vest. Carol was already waiting, pretending to be helpful. I watched from my porch with coffee in hand, camera recording from my window frame. Within 10 minutes, Ortiz was shaking his head. He pointed at the locked gate, then down at the stamped concrete line where the public easement ended, about 2 feet inside the playground fence. She tried to argue, her voice sharp and rising, but Ortiz's hand went up like a referee. "Ma'am, the easement is county property. You have no authority to restrict access." I could almost hear her teeth grinding. When Ortiz finally walked up my driveway, I introduced myself. "Mr. Hart," he said, scanning his tablet, "you filed the complaint?" "Yes, sir, and I've got footage, receipts, and a digital copy of the original site grant." He raised a brow. "You work in property compliance?" "Let's just say I'm familiar with it." He smiled. "Appreciate your thoroughness. We'll be issuing a citation to the HOA board for unauthorized restriction and misuse of signage." Carol's voice echoed from across the street. "This isn't over." And Ortiz muttered, "It never is." He had no idea how right he was. By Wednesday, Retaliation 2.0 had begun. This time, it wasn't letters. It was surveillance. A new motion light appeared on the HOA clubhouse aimed directly toward my property line. My wife noticed first. "Ryan," she said, "it's blinking red every time the kids go outside." I checked it that evening. Sure enough,
An off-brand Wi-Fi security cam, hard-mounted and streaming who knows where. I traced the signal using my work laptop and a network sniffer. Within minutes, I had the IP address, a local server registered to Brightwood HOA, Private Security Division. They'd set up a surveillance hub. My phone buzzed with an idea. Operation Sandbox was officially in play. Phase 1, Recon. I printed a map of the subdivision and marked every camera the HOA had installed, 6 total, all mounted illegally on public easement posts. I recorded each with time-stamped footage from my dashcam. Phase 2, Leverage. I called in an old colleague, Agent Dalton, a federal infrastructure auditor with a sense of humor as dry as a bone. I didn't tell him about the playground yet, just that I suspected grant misuse. "Send me the coordinates," he said. "I'll run a preliminary compliance check." By Thursday morning, he'd texted back, "Confirmed. Federal Property Grant number 492A applies. Any restriction on public access is a violation of Title 18, PISO 666. Want me to open a file?" "Yes," I typed back, quietly. That night, I drove around the neighborhood under the warm hum of streetlights. The HOA clubhouse glowed like a small fortress, blinds drawn, parking lot empty except for Carol's SUV. I parked 2 blocks down, set up a telephoto lens, and started filming. At 9:42 p.m., a man came out carrying boxes. Labels read, "Archive, HOA Minutes, 2022-2025. He tossed them into Carol's trunk. A moment later, she stepped outside, checked both ways, and peeled out of the lot. I followed from a distance, not close enough to spook her, but close enough to log the route on my dashcam. She drove straight to her house. No surprise. But 20 minutes later, she came back out. This time carrying only 1 box, which she loaded into her garage freezer. A freezer. That wasn't storage. That was concealment. By morning, I had a hunch. If she was hiding HOA records, it meant something inside those files would hurt her. Maybe proof of fund misuse or falsified fines. Phase 3, Verification. I checked the county's online database. The HOA's last budget filing listed security operations under miscellaneous reserve spending. Amount? £9,320. I cross-checked invoices the HOA had emailed to residents. Only $1,700 had been billed for security camera installation. The rest? Vanished. Classic embezzlement trail. Small enough to hide, big enough to notice. I sent the spreadsheet to Dalton. He called within the hour. "Ryan," he said, "you realize this falls under federal audit now, right?" "Perfect," I said. "But don't file yet. I want to see how far they go." By Friday, HOA propaganda started flooding the neighborhood email list. Subject lines like, "Unauthorized resident spying on HOA volunteers." "Federal investigation rumor, false and harmful." "Safety concerns near playground. Please avoid area." They were framing me as the problem. Fine. 2 could play that game. I created a simple document, Playground Access Timeline. 1 page, straight facts, dates, times, video stills, 0 emotion. Then I sent it to every resident in the community, blind copied, with the subject line, "For transparency." Within an hour, my inbox exploded. Some thanked me, some panicked. One neighbor, a quiet engineer named Brian, emailed me privately. "They've been overstepping for months. I have drone footage from when they installed those cameras. You'll want it." He delivered it on a thumb drive that night. The footage showed Carol supervising installation, pointing where to aim each camera. She wasn't just complicit. She was orchestrating it. Phase 4, Exposure. I scheduled a meeting request with the HOA board for Monday night. Agenda item, Playground Compliance Federal Review. They accepted, probably thinking they could corner me. Meanwhile, Dalton texted again. "You'll like this. Your HOA filed their last report using a forged compliance certificate.
already confirmed by our database. Everything was lining up. Saturday afternoon, I took the kids back to the playground. The padlock was gone. County had cut it off. Emma ran to the swings, Luke to the slide. Their laughter filled the air again. Pure, normal, the kind of sound you forget you miss until it's stolen from you. From across the street, Carol watched, phone in hand, face tight. I didn't wave, just stood there with my coffee, perfectly still. The thing about authority is this. Real authority doesn't need to shout. It doesn't hide behind clipboards or fake security patrols. It's quiet, procedural, and devastatingly documented. That night my printer ran non-stop. Copies of emails, financials, HOA minutes, federal statutes. Everything sorted into labeled binders. Operation Sandbox was ready for the final phase, the sting. On Monday night, when the board convened in that smug little clubhouse, every file, every photo, every timestamp was going to land on the table, and every one of them would have to choose between lying on record or watching their own signatures turn into evidence. I shut the printer off at midnight and stared at the quiet stacks of paper. Proof. Pure, unbreakable proof. Next stop, the showdown. The HOA clubhouse smelled like lemon cleaner and nervous sweat. Monday night, 7:00 p.m. sharp. Every seat was filled. Board members in pressed polos, residents with folded arms, and one calm federal agent in a grey button-down holding a black binder. That would be me. Carol sat at the centre of the table like a queen behind her dais. The gold nameplate read, Carol Dempsey, HOA President. Her smile was taut but rehearsed, the kind you wear before a storm you think you control. "Let's get started," she said. "Agenda Item 1, compliance concerns raised by Mr. Hart." Dozens of eyes turned toward me. I stood, slow and steady. "Thanks, Madam President," I said. "Before we start, I just want to make sure this meeting is being recorded per HOA bylaws, Section 2.8. Carol hesitated. "Of course." I hit record on my phone anyway. I set my binder on the table. The sound of its thud echoed through the room. "Here's what happened," I began. "On September 14th, my children were denied access to the community playground, property funded in part by federal grant number 492A. The denial came without notice, without legal authority, and in violation of both HOA bylaws and county easement law." Murmurs rippled across the crowd. Carol folded her hands. "Mr. Hart, that area is maintained by the HOA. We reserve the right—" "Actually," I interrupted, "you don't." I flipped open the binder to a printed map. Red lines marked the boundary. "This," I said, tapping the page, "is the official county plat map. The playground is within a public easement. You can maintain it, but you cannot restrict access, not without a county variance and federal notification. Neither was filed." Her cheeks reddened. "Furthermore," I continued, "you installed surveillance cameras on county posts using HOA funds. Here are the receipts, and here's where the money went missing." I laid out the spreadsheets, each cell highlighted, each invoice matched. The HOA collected over $9,000 for security. Only $1,700 went to legitimate installation. The rest, I paused for effect, went to unregistered contractors and cash withdrawals signed by you, Mrs. Dempsey. A neighbour gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Carol straightened, voice brittle. "Those are administrative disbursements." "Then why," I said, flipping another page, "did you move the HOA archives into your garage freezer last Friday night at 9:42 p.m.? The room froze. "How do you know that?" she snapped. "Because I recorded it." I slid a flash drive across the table. Exterior camera footage, time-stamped, chain of custody verified. The board members stared at her, stunned. That's when I brought out the kicker.
See, I work for the Federal Property Commission, I said evenly. My division oversees compliance for federally funded infrastructure, like the Brightwood Playground. When I saw your misuse of funds, your unauthorized signage, and your fake enforcement notices, I initiated an internal review. Her eyes widened. You set me up? I smiled faintly. No, you set yourself up. I just documented it. The room buzzed. One of the board members, an older man named Glenn, cleared his throat. Is what he's saying true, Carol? She stammered something about procedural misunderstandings, but it didn't matter. The rest of the board was already distancing themselves. Eyes down, fingers fiddling with their pens, I turned toward the residents. Folks, this isn't about playgrounds or mailboxes. This is about boundaries, legal, moral, and communal. When people in power think the rules don't apply to them, the whole neighborhood pays for it. Then, calm as ever, I laid down the last document. This is a federal notice of preliminary inquiry, I said, signed this morning by the Audit Division. It names the Brightwood HOA board as a party of interest under misuse of public grant funds. You could have heard a pin drop. Effective immediately, I continued, any HOA enforcement action related to that playground or any resident access will be suspended pending investigation. A man in the back started clapping, then another, then half the room joined in, slow, disbelieving applause that turned into something like relief. Carol stood there, frozen, her voice trembling. You can't do this. Sure I can, I said quietly. You just did it to yourself. The meeting adjourned in chaos. Residents lined up to shake my hand. The board scattered like pigeons from a storm. Carol left through the side door, clutching her purse like a life raft. I walked out under the warm glow of the streetlights, binder tucked under my arm. The air smelled like cut grass and justice. When I reached my driveway, Emma was sitting on the porch steps, hugging her stuffed dog. How'd it go, Dad? I smiled. The playground's open again? She grinned. Can we go tomorrow? Tomorrow and every day after. 2 weeks later, the county posted an official notice. Public access reaffirmed. Brightwood Playground, maintained by HOA, governed by county oversight. The cameras were removed. The HOA board resigned for personal reasons. Carol, I heard, moved out quietly. Dalton called me that Friday. Nice work, he said. You want to know the best part? Always. She tried to file a complaint against you with the county. Turns out the county attorney already had her under review for document tampering. They're referring it to the state. I chuckled. Backfire complete. The following weekend, I sat on a park bench watching my kids play. The chains squeaked, the sun cut through the trees, and laughter drifted on the wind. The normal kind, the peaceful kind. I thought about the rulebook on my kitchen counter. HOA Bylaws, Section 12, Community Conduct and Safety. Funny thing, there's not a single word in there about intimidation. What it really comes down to is respect. You follow the rules you wrote. You stay in your lane. You don't threaten families over playground swings. Because someone's always watching. And sometimes, that someone knows the law better than you do. So if you've ever dealt with an HOA power trip, if someone tried to weaponize rules against you, document everything. Dates, letters, photos. Calm beats chaos every single time. And when you finally take your stand, do it with proof, not anger. Because the truth doesn't shout. It shows up in writing. If you faced your own HOA nightmare, drop your story below. And if you believe accountability still matters, hit subscribe. Because in this neighborhood, justice lives on the record.